All right, now let's bring in the man, the legend, one of the greatest historians, the senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, Mr. Victor Davis Hanson. Victor, always good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Sean.
So I got to ask you, you're a historian of all sorts, but you really have a military background. And what's going on in New Jersey in terms of these drones? I can't think of, at least in modern times, another similar circumstance where the government was so blasé about a potential threat. We don't know what's going on, but you're not threatened by it. We're not threatened by it. I don't understand how the two can possibly comport.
No, they don't. So you're not threatened on it, but they do not want to tell you. I think you have to start with the premise that after their assertions that Joe Biden was fit as a fiddle, after their assertion the border was secure, the Chinese balloon posed no threat, they have no credibility. So we're on our own now. We don't, even if they said there was a threat, I don't think anybody would believe them at this point as they exit office with, he's polling 36% approval. But I think it has to be one of two things. If it's the government, I don't believe it's just private people suddenly after Donald Trump's election started flying drones in a way that people hadn't noticed before. I think if it's a government agency, it could be anything from EPA, CIA, they're either doing one of two things. They're trying to address what they feel is a hazard or a problem, and they don't want to panic people, so they're suppressing it, or they're doing something that they don't want to admit that is either improper or illegal. And number two, if that's not true, and I'm not saying they're mutually exclusive, it's a foreign entity that is trying to surveil either military bases or air defenses, and the Defense Department is either combating it or dealing with it, or the government doesn't want to acknowledge how porous we've been or how successful people have been from foreign entities, sort of analogous to the Chinese balloon. Remember that in that 2023 trajectory, they gave us about 7 different narratives. They said it was a weather balloon. They said not to worry. They said you couldn't shoot it down because it would injure people. They said that it was too cold, the water to retrieve. They told us everything before they finally shot it down. And then we learned a year later that they said that there had been no transmissions from the device to China, but we were told there may have been navigational or transmissions to people on the ground. So we don't know what it is, but I think those are the two. I'm not going to exclude other possibilities, but it's something that the government thinks it's dangerous or would panic, or they're embarrassed that they're lax, or it's a foreign entity, and the same thing would be applicable, that they're either there's too many people from a foreign country that they should have not let in that are involved in this, or it's a foreign country that feels it's emboldened. But I don't know why they just don't come out. Donald Trump seems to know, and I think when he's inaugurated, he'll tell us.
I do, yeah. It was something, there was a tell in his conversation.
Our military knows where they took off from. If it's a garage, they can go right into that garage. They know where it came from and where it went. And for some reason, they don't want to comment.
There's two things that I think jump out at me that you addressed. One is the history of this spy balloon. They know that the American people saw the blatant incompetence and the duplicity. We can't shoot it down because it'll hurt you. And then we shot it down, right? It was, wait a second, you just said we couldn't, and then you did it, proving that you didn't really know what was going on. And then second is, just to your second point, we know the truth is going to come out, okay? Maybe it's next week, maybe it's a month, maybe it's 6 months. Donald Trump will get to the bottom of this and he'll lose. So if you're John Kirby or Joe Biden or Alejandro Mayorkas, why go out on a limb and say these are commercial, there's no threat, when you know, unless truly that's the case, but then you wouldn't preface it with we don't know, right? I just don't know. I mean, do they just not care about their reputation? Because I'm asking you as a military historian to say, this is Baghdad Bob stuff. We are winning.
It is. I think they project, and I think to characterize your concern, they feel that if they were Donald Trump right now, and they know what they had done to Donald Trump, and they know Donald Trump was coming into office, they would feel that he would logically do what they would do if they were in his place. That is, they would go after and hold these people accountable for a variety of unethical behavior and actual crime. So I think they feel that if they were to announce right now that there was some existential lapse in what they've done, there would be a motion to impeach Joe Biden, or there would be an outcry, and they want to get out of town as quickly as possible, and they feel that they're going to let Donald Trump handle it. And I think that's all I can tell you, because everybody has a different theory. Some people think there's radioactive material that came in from overseas, maybe Ukraine, and that's why they're at night, they're trying to spot it. There's people said that there might be natural gas leaks, or everybody's speculating, and no one knows anything. All we do know is that the government, for some reason, doesn't just have a press conference and say, here's all the alternatives, this is what we think it is, we can assure you this, or we have to warn you about this. They won't do that. And there has to be a reason why. The people who are suggesting that they're hiding something are not crazy. There's a lot of authorities with a lot of experience behind them that are sober and judicious. And so no one believes these people. And I think that's, I mean, Donald Trump
because
said
if
that
you knew,
they
if
know.
you knew the answer, right? If you knew, you'd say, hey, we've taken photos, we've analyzed them. But here's the thing that's weird. If everybody started taking up drone flying like an activity, like it was the new hot craze, it wouldn't be in this one area of New Jersey that just happens to be where there's an arsenal and Donald Trump's, summer home.
Yes.
It's like it's an anomaly that it's all happening in one place. And you say, okay, well, what's there? Well, a military base and Donald Trump. And by the way, I don't mean to join in the conspiracy theory thing, but you also have to wonder, is there something at that arsenal in New Jersey that maybe is unique to protecting Donald Trump? They want to have it nearby, and they're trying to photograph all this, but there's something that has changed and is new, but it's not like they're flying drones over LA.
No, but I think the point is that they feel that if they were to be candid and transparent, they would be embarrassed and they would be met with outrage, and they do not want to leave their tenure under that cloud. They do that to other people. That's what they did to Donald
Trump. But wouldn't you cook up a better excuse? We're in the middle of analyzing it. I mean, they could use a bunch of weasel words to say, look, we've got a joint task force that's analyzing this, and just make it at least appear as though you were trying. In this case,
but you got to remember that there is no president right now, Sean. Donald Trump we've never seen it. In 2016, they were yelling Loganak, Loganak, when Michael Flynn supposedly talked to a Russian. Donald Trump, according to their own standards, is violating. He's running the country before he's even in office. Thank God.
Don't you find that interesting? I thought about that the other day, and I'm glad you brought it up. I mean, this guy is literally meeting with foreign leaders. He's talking about, legislation on the Hill. I mean, he is running everything.
Yes, that's almost as if they've abdicated. They're not even murmuring the word Loganak. It's almost as if they're saying.
But they're not also complaining. They're not like, hey,
they're welcoming him. No. They're saying we can't do it anymore. We're overwhelmed. Joe Biden really is senile. We have lied to you. Kamala Harris is a joke. Everything we've done is blown up in our face. We understand that. We're repudiated. We don't have the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, the President. We just want to get out and regroup. Now, in 2 months, we'll go after Trump. But right now, we're shattered and we want to get out, and maybe he can do a better job than we can. That's their attitude. And then the other thing to remember is, I think the balloon incident I went back and looked at that, and I was shocked at how many narratives and how incompetent they were. And they tried to convince us that it had no espionage ability. It was just an off-course weather balloon. The Chinese should be, given consideration and latitude because these things happen. They said it was too cold in Alaska to shoot it down. The water was too cold. It didn't go near any military bases. It would be too expensive to shoot it down. Our F-22s were the only planes that could go that high. And then they gave them multiple. And so why did they do that then? And why are they doing that now by comparisons? I think they were embarrassed because they really did not want to shoot this thing down, and they were afraid of the Chinese, and they thought that they could get away with it. And I think that's what they don't want to tell. They didn't tell us for weeks that there had been an Iranian plot and people almost had a contract out to kill Donald Trump.
Yeah.
We learned that from the media leaks. And so that was pretty, we haven't even got the full story. We were just told the other day that a Secret Service agent shot at the second assassination. I don't know if that's accurate. We were told that Mr. Crooks, the first assassination person, was communicating in encrypted devices overseas. They haven't told us really. I mean, the House is doing a Herculean job finding this out, but they're not transparent. And I think,
isn't it amazing how that, like, wouldn't Kennedy gets shot and there's like an entire committee. Donald Trump gets his ear taken off and they're like, stop asking questions.
Well, I mean, that's a charitable. There were people like John McWhorter in the New York Times that said it was time that he said that to Glenn Lowry on a podcast. It's better that Donald Trump be shot. And there were a number of people who said that, that were gleeful, just as they have done with the United Care Health executive. So I think they're really scared. The people that I have talked to, and I don't talk to very many, as you don't, on the left, but they really feel they have culpability. And I think whether it's Lynn Cheney or people in the House that have destroyed evidence or acted improperly, they're all thinking, if Donald Trump had done what I have done, we threw the book at him. And he has probably more credible evidence of culpability than we did against him. And he must think just like we do, that he wants revenge. And I don't think Trump is on their level. I really do think that he's a lot more magnanimous. Not that he shouldn't be, but I think he is more magnanimous than they are.
Yeah.
Far more magnanimous.
I want to talk about another threat that I think that we're facing that's self-inflicted, and that is our debt and our deficit.
Yeah.
You can put this in perspective better than anybody, but I feel like every great empire, every great country eventually falls on itself because of things like its own debt, that it's unable to help itself. And right now, the interest payments on the debt are getting so high that it's starting to crowd out our ability in the future to pay for domestic needs, and that includes our national defense. So before we go down the spending piece of this, just put it in perspective historically. How much of a danger does our debt and deficit pose to our future viability?
Well, there's two things historically to keep in mind. One is, and my colleague at Hoover, Neil Ferguson, has pointed out, it's a barometer when the interest on the debt is larger than the defense outlay, then you're in real trouble. That happened in the case of Constantinople and 17th century Spain. In other words, they had borrowed so much money and they were paying back to both public and private lenders that they didn't have that interest alone, not the debt, just the interest on it. So we owe about $1.2 billion, depending on the interest rate, it varies right now every year, to $1.2 trillion.
Okay.
And that's larger than the roughly $900 billion defense budget. So we're spending more money just to pay interest holders than we are on the debt. The other thing is, historically, very quickly, there's really only three ways to handle a debt that becomes unsustainable. And we're getting to, I think we're at 125% of GDP. And that is, you either have to inflate the currency and pay back people in cheap dollars like the Germans did during the Weimar Republic, and that's suicidal, or you have to appropriate private wealth, and that would be something like, as some people on the left have always argued, you go in and take people's 401k and then give them Social Security year credit, or you have to renounce the debt. And don't think Obama did that with the bailout with the Chrysler Corporation, and he took people who were the contractors needed to be paid. The union pension holders were down below, and he reversed the order, and he just said, you're going to pay for the bailout, but because Chrysler's not going to pay you out what they owed you. And so if we don't watch out and we keep doing this, there's going to be calls that maybe wealthy people who have T-bills, they don't need the money anyway. They have too much money, let's just not pay them back. Or maybe we should just inflate, get about 12 or 15% interest, inflation to pay it back. But it's not good. And I think right now, Trump is in a very dangerous position because he's absolutely right. By deregulating and tax cutting, he's going to get eventually more revenue and grow the economy. That's the only way out of it. But in the short term, when you campaign, and I think these were wise, you don't tax tips, or you don't tax first responders, or you don't tax military personnel, or you add up all of those cuts in taxes, and then you're only got 20% of the budget of discretionary spending, and you've got to stop the $2 trillion annual deficit. You've got too many centrifugal forces that won't work. So what he's going to have to do, he really is going to have to cut $1.5 trillion on the annual budget until these tax cuts or these deregulations grow the economy so we get greater revenue. And then he's going to have to, at some point, decide how many of these tax cuts that might not give growth as quickly to particular interest groups he's going to be able to handle. And so,
but don't you think, I think the problem with a lot of folks is they look back to a time like 94 and they say, we grew the economy, we grew our way out of it, and eventually the growth stops. And if you don't tackle spending at the same time, when the growth slows down, the spending, trajectory comes back into play and you're screwed. The fundamental problem that I think exists in this country is that we think we'll grow our way out of spending. And the problem is not just spending less. Like, what we need to tackle spending fundamentally. I mean, you can keep saying I want more of an allowance, but at some point you need to cut how much you're spending.
No, that's exactly what happened to Ronald Reagan. He had these massive tax cuts. They actually grew the economy. They got us at 7% GDP by 1984. And then he wasn't able to get the majorities he needed in the Congress to cut spending. And so he started the deficits. The only time we've had a balanced budget was when Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton got together, and Gingrich demanded cuts in spending and Clinton demanded a tax increase. But that wasn't, the economy started to ossify. And I don't know whether that would have been, until we got to the Iraq War and George Bush, I don't know if that would have been sustainable. But at some point, they're going to have to, I don't know if you can get the 20% or 30% of the budget that's not entitlements and defense spending. And I have no problem trying, but I don't know if Vivek and Elon can do it, because you're going to have an immediate hiring freeze. I think everybody thinks that's necessary. And then you're going to have to just cut out entire programs, which I think you and I don't see the point as an academic, what the point of the NEH is anymore. National Endowment for the Humanities, or we were pretty
PBS, CBS, all of them.
Yeah,
cut them.
It's a very different age now. When we put PBS and NPR, we said to the American people, especially people like myself in rural, you don't have access to communications, entertainment because of this. That's not true anymore with the internet. There's hundreds of channels, and it's very inexpensive to stream, and people can get all they want without paying for that propaganda. So I hope they can do that, but each one of those, the president will take a hit on each one of those constituencies unless he can show that the economic growth from the tax cuts and deregulation is bringing so much money that we have real economic growth. And I admire him for trying, but boy, once we start to undo, what I'm trying to say is we've had a revolution under Biden. This was so far left in comparison, even with Obama, which probably was his third term, phoning it in. But on the border and the deportations that are necessary, and this huge debt, and the spending, and the destruction of deterrence abroad, when Trump comes in, he's going to be faced with some Herculean problems. He's going to have to restore deterrence without getting into an optional war. And he's going to have to do what he did with Soleimani, Baghdadi, threaten Iran. But at some point, they're going to say, well, you put up or shut up. So he's going to have to use force in selected areas to restore U.S. deterrence. And that's going to be controversial. He's going to have to be tough on, as I said, on spending. He's going to be, on these nominees, I think he's been very good. He's said, I don't care whether they have traditional resumes in every case, but I need people who are loyal in a way that other presidents have not demanded, because you people went out to destroy me. And my first administration was full of people who, when I gave an order to them in the cabinetcies, their first inclination was to sidestep it or reject it or destroy it or countervene it. So, and that's hard because people like Pete Hegseth, who I think will be a wonderful defense secretary. I think I know Kash Patel. I think he'll be a wonderful FBI. But precisely because they are loyal to Trump and they know what they have to do, they have to be outsiders, and that means they're going to get a lot of criticism. And he's got to push all of these people through, and that's going to be very difficult. And I don't mean difficult from the Democratic side. We expect that, but he's going to have to tell 5 or 6 of these Republican senators, you voted for Lloyd Austin, you voted for Mayorkas, and if you don't vote for these people, you're going to pay a high political price. And he's going to have to be really tough, and I think he's well up to the challenge of doing that.
I agree. Yeah, he's got to make it clear. You guys gave Biden a lot of leeway. Let me do the right thing for the country and have my back. Let me get back to spending for a minute, because I want to talk about, you mentioned the Vivek and in Elon effort, the DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency. Yeah. Before I touch on that, though, I just want to ask you, you mentioned this, the big part of federal spending are what we call entitlement spending, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, veterans benefits, things that Congress, they're on autopilot. They grow every year. I still think that there's reforms and efficiencies in there that would yield billions of dollars of savings if we actually had the guts to be honest about what was going on. Hey, these programs are not run well. I mean, the VA, for example, President Trump brought in VA Choice, allowed veterans to not sit in line for months to see a VA doctor, potentially miles and miles away from their home, and go see a doctor. That saves money. It's more efficient. It's more effective. If we can actually instill efficiencies in the entitlement programs, we could save money, but no one wants to touch it. So if we don't deal with the big part of the budget, we're never going to tackle spending.
No, we have to. And you're absolutely right. Just take the Social Security disability percentages. They have quadrupled. When you and I were 10, 15 years ago, it was very rare for a family to have 2 or 3 children on Social Security disability. But over the years, we've started to say that childhood dyslexia, for example, qualifies a person for disability from Social Security. We give Social Security to people who are undocumented and illegal alien payments. Well, for disability, yeah, they can come and apply for disability insurance if they're injured on a job. And we have all sorts of things that have crept into the entitlements. They were very easy to grant, and they were granted to get political constituencies and support. But when you take them away, it's going to be very difficult because people have been accustomed to that. I'm not a socialist, but I make a good salary where I work. And I think if he said to people who make over $200,000 a year to take just an arbitrary, you get your Social Security and you'll get all the money you paid back plus 6 or 7% as if it was a savings account. But beyond that, we can't afford it. These are radical ideas, but it's not sustainable as it is right now, unless and of course the left wants to go up to 10 or 12%, 15% of your contribution instead of 7.5% on Social Security. So, and the left wants to raise the ceiling, take off the ceiling of income subject to Social Security taxes. So they have a lot of solutions, and that is raise the payroll taxes endlessly to justify this endless entitlement. But it's going to be Donald Trump was the first Republican president, and that's why he got elected. And he created a new movement by saying, I'm for the working classes, and you have been screwed over by the bicoastal left-wing elite, and I'm going to stop it. But that's going to be very hard to transmit that message if he cuts Social Security in a way that hurts that constituency. So he's going to he has to explain to them, you're not going to get your pensions, and we can't guarantee them that they will grow in a way that's commensurate with inflation unless we cut out the stuff and the people who have not paid into the system and are getting all sorts of entitlements that endanger your right to what you've earned. And that's a very complicated argument.
Yeah, I mean, just the notion, frankly, in this day and age, I mean, this gets back to your point about how times have changed. Like, there's so many better ways that we could provide for people's retirement than Social Security. But we're not willing to have an honest conversation. I want to, though, ask you about this Doge effort that Elon and Vivek Ramaswamy are leading. I appreciate it. I hope that they're successful. And maybe you can persuade me that I'm just too cynical, but I feel like the swamp and the deep state and the bureaucracy know how to fight back. And these guys are going in and poking holes in the obvious, duplicity, inefficiencies that exist in the federal government today. But each one of them, Victor, has a constituency that says, I live off of this little program that is outdated or inefficient or duplicitous, and I get my paycheck, or I'm a contractor, and they're going to fight back, and they'll have some member of Congress fight for them. Tell me, are you more hopeful about this Doge effort that the Vivek and Elon are leading, or do you share my cynicism?
Well, I'm a little bit more hopeful than past efforts.
I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
Yeah, but I'm in California, and I remember very well that when Arnold Schwarzenegger was reelected with a pretty sizable margin, and a Republican in California, he said, I'm going to take on the inefficiencies in state government, the union, especially the SIU, and the healthcare waste, and Medi-Cal. Medi-Cal had gone from about 5 or 6% of the California budget to almost 35-40%. And we had millions of people who were undocumented, millions that were on Medi-Cal. It's the largest bite, and he was going to address that. And he was trying to keep taxes at about 10 or 11%. Now they're 13.3. And what happened to him was he was an outsider like Vivek, and just like Elon, he was a can-do guy. He was popular. He'd been reelected as governor, unheard of as a Republican. And guess what? All of a sudden, he was blasted with commercials that showed him having a cigar with his buddies. They showed him flying. He was going from the Sacramento airport, getting in his private jet every weekend, flying back to LA and home where he lived, flying back. Every day the commercial said, your governor is in a private jet. Here's his cronies. He's on a motorcycle with a leather jacket, having a cigar and laughing at us while we're hardcore people, hardworking people are trying to, and it destroyed him. And it didn't just destroy him politically, it destroyed him psychologically, because he looked at all that and he had called these people girly men. They're girly men, we'll take them on. And he folded. But when he left office, he was a big spending liberal. He had a green agenda that wrecked the country. He stopped oil production, timber production, mineral production. His wife, as you know, Kennedy, was pretty much driving his agenda. He was a liberal. And they destroyed him. But he sounded tough. I don't think that's going to happen, but I share that in the past. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's never worked before. And they say it's never worked because we had the wrong people, and we can do it. But they're
the right people. I mean, these two guys have nothing to lose. They're worth a ton of money, and they know how to run a company and bring a business sense to government for the first time. And I'm just to be clear, and I think you share this, I hope they are very successful. I need them to be very successful. I worry.
I do think that Elon Musk is a renaissance, but we have never seen his like in history. I mean, this is a guy who revolutionized the space industry. No one had ever broken into the big three auto. He's got the best-selling car in California. He did everything they said was impossible with space, with X, with the Tesla. And so he has a record of never really failing. And I think if anybody can do it, he can do it. I went back the other day and looked at the Simpson-Bowles initiative that Obama had Alan Simpson and Erskine Bowles, and to simplify the tax code, encourage production and cuts. And had we followed that, and they gave the plan in 2009 to Obama, had we just followed that very gradually, it didn't balance the budget during Obama's first 4 years. It was very incremental. We would be about 5 years into a balanced budget right now. had we done that. And we would be paying off the 37 trillion. If it had gone up, the debt would have been about 7 trillion right now. And we can do that. And it wouldn't have been that hard to do. It wasn't a tax cut, raise at all. It was a simplification of the tax code. And it had cuts and incentives. But it had a lot of spending as well, cuts. So we can do it. We're a very wealthy country. It's just a matter of willpower and how long Donald Trump can rein in the Republicans in the House and Senate that have to answer to their constituencies. We'll see.
All right, I want to turn to something that you wrote, though, because it ties all in, which is how much time we've lost since he left office last time. You wrote in your newsletter, the sweeping damage that Biden has done at home and abroad, 4 years of failure. And you talk specifically, what I was thinking is that the military failures, the Navy, the inability of us. I mean, you write at one point, a disparate group of nuclear and near-nuclear powers, Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran, are either at war with Western allies or threatening war with them. Their confidence was predicated on the assumption that the U.S. after 2020 was engaged in a Maoist-like cultural revolution that warred on its own security, energy, military, university, social unity, and would continue in a Biden second term. So you mentioned with the debt, we can turn the tide here if we really are committed. Can we get back on track post-Biden?
Yeah, I think we can. I think Trump's got some very good people that are going in there. I'm worried he only has 4 years, so he starts out as a lame duck. But we've been given a great gift with Israel. Israel has done more for our national security in the Middle East than any development that we've seen in the last 50 years. For all practical purpose, the supposedly indomitable Hezbollah, the 100,000 strong terrorist army that no one can face, they were so terrible. They've destroyed it almost. They have the Assad regime. Not that the opponents are going to be any better, but it's in shambles. They can go into Syria anytime they want on the way to Iran now without worry about air defenses. They have got Hamas ready to negotiate. And everybody told us Iran is, 10 times larger than Israel. They cannot take on Iran, tiny Israel. They have destroyed all of the deterrent that Iran possesses. There's no air defenses. Anytime that Iran sends one missile toward Israel, they will reply and take out and they may do it anyway preemptively. So that is a radically new thing. And I think Donald Trump will come in and he will tell the Israelis, whatever you need, we're not going to do your fighting for you, but whatever you need as far as munitions or protection from China and Russia interference, we're going to give you and take care of business. And I think he'll solve the Ukraine thing as well.
You also are very, very clear about the damage that's been done by this illegal immigration. Let me just, for the audience, this is what you wrote. The U.S. border was systematically and deliberately destroyed to allow some 10 to 12 million illegal entrants to pour into the U.S. without legality or background checks. Never has an outgoing administration spitefully sold taxpayer-purchased border wall material for pennies on the dollar rather than see it used for the purpose for which it had been purchased. Now, here's the irony of this, Victor, I'm sorry, that he sold us, he took the materials, he didn't have to do anything with it. He then sells it for pennies on the dollar, and President Trump during the press conference remarks, yeah, we got to now buy it back at a much higher cost, mostly because of Biden's own inflation. Victor, yes. I mean, he has really done, this is costing us money.
Yeah, he hates Donald Trump far more than he likes the American people. So he's trying to make it as difficult as possible for Donald Trump. And just note one thing. We were told during the 100-day regnum of Kamala Harris that she was a border hawk, that she was actually now for the wall, that she was for deporting. And that was not true that she had protested against deportation. Where is she now? Is it the old Kamala Harris or was it the campaign Kamala Harris? And Biden told us before his campaign was aborted, he was going to secure the border. That was never intended. This was deliberate because they had looked at California, they had looked at Nevada, they had looked at New Mexico, they had looked at Colorado and said these had been red states and we flipped them because of new constituencies. And anytime a Republican said that, they said, oh, you're racist, you believe in the Great Replacement theory. And then you would look at what they were writing. They were writing books such as The New Democratic Majority or Demography is Destiny. They were gloating over it, that the open border brought in some of the world's poorest people who were destitute from Latin America, Central America, and now the world, and they needed immediate entitlement support. It's probably going to cost us $500 billion when it's all done per year. And that would be wonderful because it would give them a constituency for at least 2 generations. It would make us have to have a larger government and more taxes, and that was what they wanted. I think the only thing that will stop it is Donald Trump and the idea that the so-called Hispanic vote is pretty much 50-50. And you're already hearing a lot of left-wing people in furor said, we talked down to those people and they didn't listen. We know what's good for them. And now all these people who are the beneficiaries of our open borders, they're getting impacted and they're mad at us, so screw them. We should close the border. I've heard that a lot. I think that was on some of the Obama former advisors and their anger or the bulwark, these never Trumpers people. They're very mad at the Hispanic community. And I think that's good because then they will close the border or they won't oppose it.
You
think
mentioned
it's going to hurt them at the poll.
You name checked Obama there for a second. You also wrote on your website that Obama has lost his influence in the Democratic Party. As we look to 2028, is he going to be a kingmaker or is he done after what Joe Biden has given us?
No, I don't think he's going to be a kingmaker. I think I don't think we really calibrated how out of touch he's become the last 7.5 years. There was something weird about Obama. He checked out, remember, the last year of his administration. He was down to about 40% approval. Then Hillary and Trump fought it out. He played golf and he became a senior statesman while he was president. And he left with about a 53% approval. But then he had cut all these Netflix and Silicon Valley deals. He's worth over 200 or 300 million. He has 4 mansions. And the image of him flying in from one of the Kalorama, Martha's Vineyard, the beach in Hawaii, the mansion, the big nice home in nice Chicago district, one of the 4, then coming in, flying in, and then talking to African-American activists and saying, you don't know what's good for you. If you don't vote for Kamala, you're racist or you're sexist. Only I can tell you what is good for you. And that really did not work. And it also dovetailed with the Cardi B, the Oprah, the Al Sharpton disclosures that all of these people thought that their brand and their endorsements were so important and they would get the minority vote. And then we learned that they were getting hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in payoff money to endorse Kamala Harris. And she herself had no constituency among African-American men, really. She lost about 30% of them. And that was kind of an astounding figure given the propaganda. So I think that the idea that you're going to be an elite, bi-coastal elite like Obama, hang out with the Silicon Valley, Wall Street zillionaires, and then from time to time you're going to jet in from a mansion and tell African Americans what's good for them as you change your accent, modulate your tone, Hopi and changey. I just don't think it's, when you look at Charlemagne the God, or you look at a lot of African American people in Chicago that are yelling at Mayor Johnson, and I see it here. I live in a Latino community. It's Mexican Americans, about 80%. I don't think I met one Mexican American working male over the age of 40 that did not vote for Donald Trump.
Wow.
It was amazing. And this is in California, Central
unbelievable.
Valley. So
what a
it
shift.
is.
What a
It
shift.
is. Donald Trump did that. I think we got to really point out that this was a man that the Mitt Romney, McCain, Bush wing all said was racist.
Yep.
And yet he has been more ecumenical.
He sucks at being racist, doesn't he? He sucks at being racist.
Yes, and he said to the country, we're going to substitute racial chauvinism, tribalism for class. Yep. And the white truck driver, the Latino electrician, the black cement expert, you have more in common than with each other than you do with the elites of your party or your interests. And that was a radical thing to do.
I
And
know.
he did it with
It
the
worked.
union, and he didn't get full credit, but it was a revolutionary achievement. It really was.
Yeah. Victor, always appreciate your time. I wish you a very
Thank you.
safe and enjoyable holiday season. I look forward to seeing you back here in 2025.
Thank you, Sean. I enjoyed it.
You bet. Take care. What a great conversation with Victor Davis Hanson. By the way, next week on Monday, Eric Prince is here, the former head of Blackwater and the Navy SEAL. We're going to get into it about our national security, drones, everything, China, you name it. We're going to break it down with Eric Prince on Monday. Also, if you're looking for information about the inauguration, how to get tickets or whatever, I'm putting a lot of that in my newsletter, SeanSpicer.com. It's free to sign up. You're always welcome to become a VIP. Or if you're looking for that last minute Christmas gift, to give it to somebody, give them a subscription to SeanSpicer.com. It's free to sign up there. Go to SeanSpicer.com and sign up. Thanks for tuning in today. Remember, Eric Prince is on Monday, and we've got a big, big lineup all week long. I will see you back here on Monday. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.